Job interview, software developer, the behavioral curveball.
Welcome back for your second round, David. How are you feeling after the system design discussion?
Hi, Chloe. I'm doing great. It was actually a lot of fun diving into system architecture with Michael.
I'm glad to hear that. In this round, we're going to focus more on your leadership, how you handle pressure, and your approach to workplace conflict.
That sounds perfect. I believe those skills are just as critical for a senior developer as writing clean code.
I couldn't agree more. Let's start with a classic scenario. Tell me about a time you had a major disagreement with a product manager regarding project scope.
That is a situation most developers know all too well. At my previous job, we were working on a critical billing update.
What exactly was the source of the disagreement?
The product manager wanted to launch 3 new payment methods simultaneously in a single sprint to meet a marketing deadline.
That sounds incredibly risky. What was your initial reaction to that timeline?
I knew immediately that trying to ship all 3 at once would compromise our testing phase and likely lead to critical transaction errors.
So, how did you handle the situation without causing friction with the product team?
I didn't just say no. Instead, I gathered the engineering team to map out the technical dependencies and estimated effort for each payment method.
Did you present those estimates directly to the PM?
Yes, I set up a meeting and presented a compromised roadmap. I suggested launching the primary payment method first as an MVP.
And what about the other 2 payment methods?
We proposed releasing them sequentially over the following 2 sprints. This ensured we could thoroughly test each integration.
How did the product manager respond to that proposal?
Initially, they were hesitant because of the marketing campaign, but once I showed them the potential financial risk of a buggy release, they agreed.
That's a great example of using data and risk assessment to align stakeholders. What was the ultimate outcome?
We launched the first payment method right on time. It was incredibly stable, and we rolled out the rest ahead of schedule because our initial foundation was solid.
Excellent. Now, let's pivot to a high-stress situation. Can you describe a time when you experienced a major production outage?
Yes, about a year ago, our main user authentication service went completely dark on a Friday afternoon.
A Friday afternoon outage is every engineer's worst nightmare. What was your immediate first step?
My first step was to establish a dedicated war room channel on Slack to centralize all communication and prevent chaotic messaging.
Good. How did you coordinate the troubleshooting process?
I assigned clear, non-overlapping roles. One engineer focused on analyzing the latest deployment logs, another monitored database connections, and I handled external stakeholder updates.
That's smart. Keeping stakeholders informed prevents them from interrupting the technical team. What caused the outage?
We discovered a memory leak caused by a new third-party dependency we had integrated earlier that morning.
How did you resolve it in the moment?
We immediately rolled back to the previous stable release, which restored service within 15 minutes of identifying the issue.
And what steps did you take to make sure this wouldn't happen again?
The following Monday, I led a blameless postmortem. We updated our CI/CD pipeline to run automated canary deployments and memory profile tests before pushing to production.
I love that you emphasized a blameless postmortem. Why is that culture important to you?
Because if people are afraid of being blamed, they will hide mistakes. A blameless culture encourages transparency and faster incident resolution.
Absolutely. Let's talk about team dynamics. Have you ever had to deal with a team member who was underperforming?
Yes, I mentored a junior developer whose sprint velocity dropped significantly, and they started missing daily stand-ups.
How did you address this without making them feel defensive?
I scheduled a private one-on-one coffee chat. I didn't start by criticizing their work. Instead, I asked how they were doing and if they felt supported.
What did you discover during that conversation?
It turned out they were overwhelmed by the complexity of our legacy codebase and felt too intimidated to ask for help on public channels.
That is a very common issue for junior devs. How did you help them overcome that hurdle?
We set up daily pair programming sessions for 30 minutes every morning to unblock their complex tasks together.
That requires a lot of patience. Did their performance improve?
Yes, dramatically. Within a month, they were completing tasks independently, and they eventually became one of our most active contributors.
That's incredibly rewarding to hear. It sounds like you take mentorship very seriously.
I do. I believe a senior developer's impact is measured by how much they elevate the engineers around them, not just by their individual code output.
That is exactly the philosophy we look for in our engineering leaders. Well, David, those were excellent answers.
Thank you, Chloe. I really appreciate your thoughtful questions.
Of course. Do you have any questions for me about how we handle engineering culture here?
Yes, I'm curious. How does your management team support continuous learning and professional development for senior engineers?
See you in the next English conversation session by Wisdom Studio 8.